It's the time of the season when love runs high. In this time, give it to me easy and let me try with pleasured hands to take you in the sun to promised lands, to show you everyone. It's the time of the season for loving.
Hi, I'm Elia Einhorn, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Music Podcast. In some ways, the Zombies got it all wrong. They wanted to be rock and rollers like their heroes Elvis and Little Richard, but were marketed as posh English schoolboys. They hoped to be rich and famous, but hired a classic snake of a 60s manager who ensured they never had enough money and had no idea when their songs became major hits abroad. They disbanded just before releasing their biggest album and hugest hit single, and staunchly refused to reunite for decades. Next, after a few false starts, the two main members, songwriter and keys player Rod Argent and singer Colin Blunstone, reformed the band and hit the road at a time in their lives when most of their contemporaries were looking into retirement plans. But the Zombies got a hell of a lot right too. The band's 1968 masterpiece Odyssey and Oracle is considered a psychedelic pop classic and is arguably one of the best records of the 1960s. Songs like Time of the Season and She's Not There featured soaring melodies buoyed by dense, complex harmony vocals. Argent's songwriting paired with Blunstone's expressive tenor were an absolutely winning combination that shot the band to the top of the charts. The Zombies have released 6 studio albums, most recently last year's Still Got That Hunger, and are currently touring across Britain and America. Hollis Brown are hardcore green room rock historians. The band even took their name from a song on Bob Dylan's 1964 album The Times They Are A-Changin', called Ballad of Hollis Brown. The Dylan reference is fitting, as their music draws heavily on 60s folk as well as 70s classic rock like Neil Young and the Allman Brothers. Their song Death of an Actress could almost be a Zombies tune. Hollis Brown and the Zombies have spent a good deal of time on the road together. The two bands' musical kinship shines through in this conversation, with singer Mike Montali and guitarist Jonathan Bonilla providing the perfect foil for Rod and Colin's incredible stories. Here then is a history of the Zombies' career as told by the band, including tales of meeting the Rolling Stones in their hardcore R&B purist days, how the Zombies tried to meet Elvis in Memphis but hung out with his dad instead, and how it feels to have a new record in 6 Billboard charts after not touching those hallowed heights for 50 years. You'll also hear about Mike Montali writing Aaron Neville's new song I Wanna Love You, the music industry now versus in the 60s, and how Hollis Brown's guitarist John got a little too drunk one night in Memphis and ended up with an Elvis tattoo. Check it out.
My name is Mike Montali. I play in Hollis Brown.
Hi, my name's Colin Blunstone. I'm the lead singer in the Zombies.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Bonilla. I play in Hollis Brown.
And I'm Rod Argent, and I play in the Zombies. So it's great to see you again.
It's great to see you. It's been a...
We've done a few shows together now.
Yeah. Last one was in New Orleans, right? So what brings you to New York now?
We're just starting another tour, US tour. We were in the US earlier this year doing some southern dates. We did a cruise with the Moody Blues, which is the 3rd time we've done it.
We were on the boat the week after you.
Oh, were you?
You got off the boat and we got right on. Yeah.
No, it was great, and it was lovely to do that for the 3rd time. And then we stayed on and did a few shows in Florida. So that was a bit of work down south. This time we're over here. Colin and I have come over a week before the rest of the guys because it's a way of doing some promotion stuff. But also it's a lovely way of acclimatising to the time change and everything. You know, because I hate coming in for that first day. You know, you've been here one day and then suddenly you're playing at 9 o'clock at night, which is like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, that happens to us when we go to Europe. It's
so
like the same thing.
You get the same effect,
because we go in the morning of the show usually.
Yeah.
And the last time we did, we were on tour with the Counting Crows for like 3.5 months in the States, you know. So as a singer, I got used to singing at the same time for the same amount of time.
You absolutely do.
And then all of a sudden, a week later, we were on a plane to Europe, and it just was like, oh, now you have to sing for 2 hours at this time, and my body just was, oh my goodness.
It screams, doesn't it?
Yeah,
in
I wasn't
all sorts
expecting
of ways.
it to happen that way. But
people don't realise it, you know, when they talk about, often people used to say, actually coming to the States from where we are, is not a problem, you know, but these are all businessmen talking because they have a day which is basically 9 till 5, and if they finish at 5, that's still only 11 p.m. English time, whereas we come over and the first day we work here, we don't start till 9, and it's already 2 a.m.
Right.
You know, so your system's not used to it, and you can't think straight. You
Yeah,
know?
especially when your body is your instrument, you know.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I find this really difficult. What you would too. You know, it's 2 hours of lyrics that you've got to remember, and your mind is completely fogged up with this time difference, and you've got to try and get through 2 hours of lyrics. But as you know, I'm very good at making them up. So if I get stuck, I just...
Do you do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
up?
he
All the
claims
time.
songwriting royalties. But so you guys are you're doing some New York shows. They were just saying.
Yeah.
Have you
we
started that?
Yeah, we started last week. We're playing every Wednesday at a club called Berlin in the Village.
Yeah, it's East
And,
Village.
so tomorrow we'll be there.
Uh-huh.
We're doing a lot of regional stuff. We were on the road a lot promoting our album 3 Shots, and we're kind of like trying to write now. So we wanted to be. It's good for us to really try new material now every week and
Great.
get the band, you know, it's kind of tight for the next record. So it's an opportunity for us to stay home a little bit for the first time in a while and to really focus on writing, which we're not the type of band that really writes on the road too much.
I can't do that.
No,
I can't write on it. Can you?
I don't like it. No, but I'm also the type of musician where I can't just say, all right, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna write a song. It's like I have to it just has to come, you know.
Yeah.
Like there are days where I could write 5 new things and then I can go a month and not write anything, you know.
And you can start an idea and it can
Yeah.
it seems to be coming on great.
Yeah,
And then
usually-
somehow it sort of gets stuck, has to percolate for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I read some things that like Neil Young is like that. Like he could sit down and write an entire album in a week and then not write anything for months. And it's just when it hits, it hits. And
When the
just-
faucet opens,
Yeah.
you know.
But you guys have just got your first big cover, I think, for a song. You've just got a first
The Aaron
cover?
Neville.
Yeah. Well,
That's a great
we've been
story.
writing songs together, and Aaron Neville. I guess it was a crazy story, but it took years for him to actually put the song out. You know, so
You were telling us the story of that. You just met his producer, didn't you?
yeah,
on the
we
street?
did a record store day release 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago it was a Velvet Underground tribute record.
Yeah.
Maybe 3 years ago at
I think
this
so,
point.
'cause we didn't do one last year.
Whatever it was. And so we did this kind of cool little industry showcase thing for the record in Brooklyn, and I was driving home from the gig because I live not too far from there in New York, and I'm friends with a guy named Eric Krasno, who's a really good guitar player. He plays in a band called Soul Live, and he was just walking down the street, so I thought it'd be funny to just pull over and scream at him. So I said, "Hey, how's it going? What's up? Oh, what are you doing?" I said, "Nothing. What's going on?" He said, "I want you to come up and have a drink." I said, "All right, cool." So I parked the car, went up, and just started hanging out. And I said, "What are you working on?" "Oh, well, I'm producing this Aaron Neville record." So I immediately took the guitar. I was like, "I got a song." Boom. And just sang him a song, you know. He's like,
And
"Oh."
did you have a song?
Oh, I had what I thought was a song. You know?
Okay.
And so he's like, "Great, I'll record it." And this was like in his living room. Just put a mic up. I recorded a demo. Didn't hear anything for like 6 months. All of a sudden, I get an email from him. "Hey, Aaron likes the song. We cut a demo." Sent me the demo, really rough, really like not, my all-time favorite voice, Aaron Neville. Like he didn't have the voice that you're expecting. So I guess he was just feeling it out. So I was like, okay, this is cool. Didn't hear anything back again for like another year and a half. And last week I just got a text, "Hey, the album's coming out and your song made it."
And you
So-
just played it to me, and he sounds
Yeah,
beautiful on the
it
final
sounds
record.
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
Congratulations.
fantastic.
Well
Yeah.
done.
I think the irony of it is before that even took place, for years on the road, Mike used to do an Aaron Neville impersonation.
I did. I
So-
did.
Did you tell him that before he recorded the song?
But no, we'd be on the road, and at the time, Albert, our manager, he would always egg Mike on. He was like, "Do it real quick," and he would do it, and it was pretty good.
been
I haven't
a
heard Mike
while.
do it in years,
I
but
don't know much, but I know I love you.
funny how things.
Bob
would-
Dylan said his voice is the voice of the angels, which is like, amazing.
does have that face tattoo.
His
with the
voice
cross.
is amazing. He's a New Orleans guy.
Is he?
Oh,
Speaking
is
of,
he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. The Neville brothers
wow.
are big New Orleans.
They were New Orleans. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And how did your album? I hear it was well received and everything. The
Yeah,
new album?
yeah, it was really great. You know, we got to go. We were on the road touring it, got really good press, and now we're excited for the next thing. You know, we're in a good place to.
We were knocked out because when our album came out during the October tour, Colin, wasn't it?
I think so,
October
yeah.
tour last year, and we suddenly got a phone call from Billboard, and they said, just to let you know that your new album, you know, is in 6 of our charts. Well, I know they have hundreds of charts in Billboard, but most importantly, it had actually made the top 100 album sales.
Wow.
And they said, do you realise that's the first time as the Zombies in 50 years that you
Well, how
charted
does that
with
feel
us?
for you?
It felt fantastic,
Yeah.
you know, because Colin often says, and I agree with him totally, that in some ways we're more proud of the current incarnation than we are of the original incarnation of the Zombies, because when we got back together really on the spur of the moment, about 15, 16 years ago now, we started just doing 1 or 2 gigs completely off the cuff, and we weren't planning anything. You know, we thought, let's do half a dozen gigs for fun, and it was that very, very gradually started us off. We eventually came over to the States, and some of those early gigs, we were, Colin and I were capitalising those early tours completely. You know, we had to put the money up because we were barely breaking even. But we just thought of it as a buzz to be playing again. And somehow we've built that over the course of that time into, you know, playing really big shows, big audiences, and getting great, like you know, we got great press on the last album and good response. And
I like the title.
Feels fantastic. Yeah, it's still got that hunger. Well, it comes from a line in one of the songs called "Chasing the Past," which ironically is not about chasing the past, but so it's all very natural. And like you guys, we do it from the heart. You know, because I don't think there's any other way of making music. Actually,
Right.
I think you have to do it from the heart. You can't say, "This is a computer. We've got to have a hit. Let's let's make sure we get to the hook in 30 seconds or whatever you do." You know, we've never done that.
Right.
And Colin always says that used to work against us when we were younger, sometimes.
Well, maybe. I don't know. I think there were many things working against us. I
Yeah.
mean, we've talked about it so many times.
Yeah.
We, going back to the 60s, you know, I'm talking about 1964 to 1967, we had the most appalling image, especially in the UK. And it's basically...
Well, we had a manager who didn't like rock and roll, which wasn't a good
It's
start,
not a
was
good
it?
start, no. I mean, but basically we were 18 years old when we very first started.
Straight out of school.
We were straight out of school and we didn't understand anything about the business. And it was totally out of our control. And I think, I always say you should accept, of course, most graciously, any success that you get at any time in your life. But out of choice, it might have been interesting if our first hit record had come a couple of years later when we understood the business a little bit better and we could have been more in control, because there just seemed to be so many things against us, and we were presented very much as sort of academic schoolboys at
Which
a
is
time,
crazy.
you know,
Yeah.
people want bands to be dangerous and
Yeah, but
on the edge.
we
you
weren't
know.
even particularly academic. I mean, they were just saying, well, what can we hang this story on? And that followed us around all our career. And at the same time, you got Jagger, who was at the LSE, you know, which was a top university.
Yeah.
You got Paul Jones from Manford, who was at Oxford. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
I know. It was so false. And that's one of the problems. If you try to create an image that is
It's not
contrived
natural,
and not
yeah.
natural, and I mean, it really backfired on us because it wasn't
Not
our
right.
idea.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about
Yeah.
the Beatles. They were just totally natural.
Absolutely.
And people who are younger don't often understand what an enormous departure that was. Because up to that time, the whole showbiz concept was that you said certain things, you never mentioned other things. Lennon and McCartney, and well, all of them, when they were asked a question, they would answer an honest answer.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
they would just
yeah.
say exactly what they thought. It got them into trouble sometimes. But
Yeah.
people...
Well, they were from a tough city, Liverpool, right?
yeah,
You know?
but they were just being themselves.
Yeah.
You know? And that is the answer, I think.
Let me ask you, when you guys reunited about 15 years ago, were you aware that particularly two of your songs, I know for me, Time of the Season, She's Not There, had become basically standard repertoire on every rock station in America, classic rock station?
Well, I did know that because the thing is, it was that really that provided, you know, I was just very lucky having written the songs. Personally, it provided me with a cushion of finance which enabled me to follow what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was very aware of that. You know,
But
and
I think to a degree though, Rod, there was a surprise for us because when we first started, for the first 6 or 7 years, we toured as Colin Blunstone and Rod Argent, not the Zombies at all.
because we didn't want to sort of artificially rake over the coals.
No,
you
we
know.
didn't. And also, we didn't feel that there was that much interest in the Zombies. It wasn't till we got out on the road that we realised that internationally, it's not just in the UK and not just in America.
Yeah.
There's a huge interest in the Zombies, and it took us by. It's a very pleasant surprise, but it really took us by surprise. And in the end, we were being asked to do more and more zombie tunes that we'd forgotten. We had to. It's an embarrassing situation. We had to relearn zombie tunes. They're 50 years old.
Yeah, well, some of them we never played live, Colin.
No, we probably just played them in the studio and then forgot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we got a couple of
But you
those.
tour in Asia, in Japan,
Yeah,
right?
do you?
Japan,
No, you guys
Yeah,
we
do.
do. Japan,
have you
no,
been?
we have
No,
yet
no.
to go there.
the
but-
Philippines as well. In fact, the Philippines is probably the country we were biggest in.
Really?
It would be the other side of the world to where we live.
course.
The first time we went to the Philippines in 67, and we had no idea about the Philippines at all. And in my mind's eye, I thought we were going to go to an island resort.
Well, this is how the manager
Put it
described
over.
it to
If
me.
we had this red hot manager, he was terrible.
He said, "You won't lose money, guys."
You won't lose money. So I thought we were going to
That's
go
how
to
you
some
know.
kind of resort, and we would be playing in a hotel bar in the evenings, and hopefully we'd do some sunbathing during the day. So I thought, well, it would be a little holiday. And when we arrived at Manila Airport, it was the middle of the night, and there were thousands of people there. And we did that sort of thing when you get off a plane and you look back to see
Who's on the plane?
who's on the plane that these people have come to see. And then you suddenly realise, it's us. They've come to
Oh,
see
man.
us, and there were all film crews there. And we opened to 28,000 people at the Araneta Coliseum
In a 10-night residency.
in a 10-night residency. And the next night was 32,000 people. And we were being paid £80 a night for the
Between
band.
us.
Oh man.
£80, so like $140 between us to play to 28,000 people.
When was it? What year?
67.
60s?
Is my inflation off? Is that like?
It's not good. It's not good business.
You have to realise that
Yeah.
$140 in those days is worth at least $1,000 a night now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But still,
if you want
Making
strictly
the big
business
bucks.
advice, if you want
To
business
28,000
advice,
people, yeah.
don't come to us. No, we're not the best people to advise on business.
We found out that the guy, the promoter there, God knows what our manager was making. Promoter there made out of that week £26,000 profit, which is what, $50,000.
Yeah, and that's a
$50,000
long time ago.
in
Yeah.
the 60 in 1967. Yeah.
Yeah. You hear a lot of those stories, though.
I mean, especially
What's
in
that?
the
Half
60s.
a million now or something? You know.
In the 60s, bands were. It wasn't just us. All bands were ripped off, and it just seemed to be the normal thing.
well, that's why a lot of the bigger bands just starting their own management companies and doing
Yeah.
their own thing.
Yeah. I think possibly if we'd kept going, we would have done something like that.
Yeah.
I'm the only one. I think all the rest of the guys are quite happy that we finished, and it seemed a natural time to finish the band in '67. But I'm the one that's intrigued what might have happened next, especially because Rod and Chris White, the other major writer in the band, they were just going into a very, very hot streak of writing wonderful songs. And I'm always intrigued what we might have done. It doesn't matter.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So you guys broke up the first time in 67.
Yeah.
And Time of the Season became a big hit in
69, yeah.
So 2 years later. How did that happen?
Well, it's crazy in those days because I'm fond of saying the world was a much bigger place in those days. Nowadays, if you get a cover like Aaron or whatever, and say Aaron put that out in Australia and it was a hit, within a day you'd know. It would be on social media,
Right.
or you'd have someone talking to you. In those days, we just didn't know. And years after we split up, we found, for instance, that we usually had a hit somewhere in the world, but we just didn't know at that time. So what it meant was that because we were so based in the UK, we had fewer hits in the UK than anywhere else, that the income that all the band were getting that weren't the writers was just going down and down. And it meant in the end that I remember that the first nail in the coffin was our guitar player saying, "Look, guys, I'm about to get married. I've got no money. I've got to move on." And that started the disintegration, really. It was only Chris and I that had the money. So you didn't know a lot of things were happening. And we knew that Al Cooper, who was the really hot new producer, after the Super Sessions and Blood, Sweat and Tears and everything, for Clive Davis, He'd been hired by Clive Davis. He came over to the UK, picked up 200 albums, and went back to Clive and said, there is one album that, he said, I don't care who's got this, we have to pay whatever it costs to get it. And he said, well, we've got it and we've passed on it, you know. He said, well, you've got to release it. But then the first song they released was actually one of my favourite songs on the album, which was a Chris White song called Butcher's Tale, but it's never a single in a million years.
Yeah.
And so that stiffed.
Yeah.
And then we'd broken up by this time because we thought nothing was happening. The second song was one that everyone thought was commercial, which was Care of Cell 44, but it didn't happen.
That's a great song.
Thank you.
Great song.
And then the third one, they put out Time the Season. Again, that didn't happen. But there was one very small DJ in a little town in Idaho called Boise who started playing it. And in those days, as you guys know very well, the whole record industry was very, very different.
Yeah.
And things could take their time to break out. And this guy started playing this song, and it started getting instant reaction, but in a tiny pool. You know, someone threw a pebble in a tiny pool, and the ripples gradually started to radiate outwards. And then one or two other people started playing it. And the whole process took 6 months before it started climbing the Billboard charts. And, you know, in the end, it made #1. But we didn't know until
I can't believe that
about
you
the
didn't
last
know.
month. No,
Oh
we
my
did not
goodness.
know until about the last month.
But also the funny thing is that, you know, the band split in '67, and I think by the time Al Cooper had taken the album to CBS, by the time they'd released it, by the time 3 singles had come off it, Time of the Season, I think, was a hit in '69, wasn't it?
69.
Yeah.
And by
2
that
years
time,
later,
we
by
were...
that time, Rod had started Argent, and I was just starting a new solo career, and it was very difficult for us to get back together again, but it was very frustrating to see yourself at #1 in the charts.
See, I loved that. I didn't find it frustrating at all because
Oh.
it felt like it was just a complete bonus. We were both starting, you know, Chris and I were doing a production deal to do your new album and to do Argent, and it made it very easy. We were over there.
Yeah.
and
How come
so we
you
could-
guys didn't decide to just do another Zombies record at that time?
Because we'd moved on to different paths, and you know what I said about not wanting to rake over coals.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
we've always naturally looked ahead, always.
Did you perform, like when you were doing Argent, you're doing your solo career, did you guys perform those songs on your own sets?
We did Time the Season. Actually, that's where Hold Your Head Up came from.
Yeah.
Because
The bass line, right?
well, we were playing a version of Time the Season one night, and Chris White, the original bass player,
Yeah.
was he and I wanted to definitely stay in the business. You know, we didn't want to give up at all. But Chris said, I don't want to play anymore. He said, but I'd love to be a silent member of Argent, you know, like co-producer, co-writer. And he was at one of our early gigs, and we were playing a very, very long set. And so we went into Time the Season, and we started improvising, and we went into a riff we'd never played before. And Chris heard that riff and loved it and wrote a song around it. And that
That's
was Hold
great.
Your Head Up.
Oh, wow.
So
There
it
you
came
go.
right out of Time the Season.
Now, did you always collaborate together throughout the years, or the
What,
two of
Colin
you?
and me?
Yeah.
We have done as
yeah.
not as writers,
No.
but usually it would be Rod producing me. Rod's produced 3 or 4 of my albums, and also we every now and again we do a charity gig together, or something would come.
Remained in touch.
So we
yeah.
were
Right.
always working all the way through the years. But I mean, there was a huge gap. Argent came off the road in '74. And my first solo band came off the road about then as well, and we didn't get back together again until, as a touring band until the end of the '90s. So it's nearly a quarter of a century's gap.
Was there anything that sparked it? Was there any like one thing you can say just?
Well, funny enough, we
sparked
both remember this in a different way. But do you want to?
Well, I mean, we might remember it in a different way, but Colin had started eventually to go back on the road with a solo band after many, many years of not wanting to do it. And around about 2 years after he'd done that, there was a jazz musician called John Dankworth who was married to Cleo Lane, and John's dead now, but he was a very good friend. And he had a theatre, and he asked me to do a charity show to raise money for the theatre. And I said, well, I hadn't done any live stuff. I've all been in music all my life, but I hadn't done any live stuff for a long time. And he said, oh, come on. He said, do it in the all-music concept, because this theatre was all music. So he was a great jazz musician, a real pioneer. But he loved all sorts of music, classical music. He liked good rock and roll, and so he had very open ears. So I thought, yeah, I'll do something in that spirit. And I put an evening together where I actually got Argent back together for 40 minutes, but I did a jazz set, and I did I played a Bach concerto with a string quartet as well. So I tried to include it all. Colin was in the audience, and he got up and sang "She's Not There in Time this Season," and I tell you what, it felt so nice and so natural, and it really felt like we'd only been playing a couple of weeks before. And soon after that, Colin phoned me up and said, "You know, I'm going to do a few more gigs. Why don't you do them with me?" And I said, I don't know if I want to get into all that, you know. Yeah. And that's how slowly it started. And really, certainly from my point of view, I really did not want to do anything to do with the zombies, because I thought that's looking back, you know, just trying to rake over the coals. That's the reason I didn't want to do any zombies things to start with. And it was only when it started feeling natural, because we suddenly realised, as Colin said, there was a lot of stuff that we hadn't played live ever, and it became a rediscovery for us as well.
Yeah.
And it started becoming interesting then. So we'd do something like "I Want You Back Again," which we've done recently, that we'd never ever played, and that felt like doing something new. And it wasn't just saying cynically, "Oh, let's give people what they want, and we might be able to make a buck." It was never that, and that's not what it is now.
Yeah.
You know, because as I've said before, I believe you have to do things for the right reason. Really.
Well, you guys are doing new records, and you're not just relying on the old material,
Absolutely.
which is good.
What do you guys find it's like? I mean, you're much younger than us. And
not that much younger.
But
it seems it from where I'm sitting.
But when you I mean, you know, like making your way now, it must be very different to when we started.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know what it was like back then. I've only read stories, but it's different today. I mean, I feel like nobody in the music industry really knows what's going on. It's sort of like you find your niche, and if it works, it works. There's no clear path to doing it anymore. Like, I feel like back in the day, you just get a record deal, you get a hit song, you tour it. Now, you know, you could have a hit song and it wouldn't really matter that much. It wouldn't necessarily mean that you're bringing crowds, or vice versa. You know, there's bands that don't have hits and can, you know, sell out any venue they play. Yeah. And then there's, you know, bands that do have hits and can't sell out a venue. So it's strange. It's a strange time for music.
Yeah, there's definitely more control though. Like when you were saying that your image was not chosen by you, and you kind of got put into a wheel of like
horrible.
And I think that there's a refreshing kind of thing about today where artists can kind of define themselves
because of social media.
Yeah, and just you could do it yourself. You know, it's everything. It's not, you don't need necessarily. I mean, obviously, getting the major record deal and stuff can give you an opportunity to have mass exposure and all that, but you don't necessarily need that because you can have a random video go viral on YouTube or something, and all of a sudden you have 15 million people who know who you are with 30 seconds, you know?
So there's always the possibility
exactly. So it's
of
very
promoting yourself and getting your stuff out there, even though you've got huge competition.
Well, that's the thing. You know?
I actually watched an interview, Steven Tyler on Howard Stern, and he said that when Aerosmith came up, there were maybe 30 bands in America that were unsigned, that labels wanted to sign, that were worth their salt, and they were one of them. And I'm thinking now, there's about 3,000 musical acts
on
and
this
bands.
block.
Yeah, in this city alone.
And staying at that hotel across the street.
And I'm like, wow, 30 bands that were unsigned that labels were looking at. Like, I mean, there were other bands, but they weren't worth their salt. Nobody cared about them. And I'm thinking, if there were only 30 acts worth their salt out there, I mean,
well, we got that a lot. You know,
even
when we were touring with Rich Robinson, who was in the Black Crowes, you know, huge band, and he was saying in Georgia, where they were from, that there was like 2 or 3 bands that were coming up, and they all kind of got pretty big.
Driving
and Crying,
and some other band he mentioned.
And, you know, REM was probably around at that time.
Yeah.
Athens.
I think they're a little bit before.
And that was it, you know. Now, so there's only, like you said, there's a lot more competition now, but there's also a lot more freedom to create, I think.
The great thing, I think, when we started was it was the days before even any discos or anything. So it was still a social scene where if people went out to meet the opposite sex or whatever, they went to a dance where a group was playing. So there was a massive local canvas where that was the bedrock of the whole social situation.
Well, what was that like? Did you go see some cool bands when you were coming up in England?
Did
you see the Stones?
We did
see the Stones.
Oh, we saw the Stones,
We did. We went to a little club called Studio 51. It's in Central. Actually, it's not
Held
there
what, about
anymore.
80 people, Colin? Something like that?
Something like
people?
that.
Were they doing Chuck Berry covers? at
Yeah,
that time?
and they were all
Yeah.
sitting
So did
down
we-
on stools.
That's right.
Just
What?
sitting on
And we
stools.
were-
Oh, they were very purist in those days.
Jagger didn't move at all. You know,
No.
It was just sitting there. And it's called Studio 51. It was just off Leicester Square. And it was sensational.
It was the best thing I'd
It
ever
was
seen.
So fantastic because it was so small and the music was just so exciting.
And they were
Brian
just
Jones must
true
have
to
been
what
there.
they
He was,
really
yeah.
felt
At that
then.
time.
And I
Ginger
remember,
Baker says the opposite, but
Really?
have you seen the thing Ginger Baker said?
What
when
did he say?
When he first saw the Stones, they were absolute, like,
But when did you see them?
when did he see him? He was supposed to play with them, and he refused. So
Yeah.
he
He was
told his
supposed to
friend,
be the
it may
drummer.
have been really
probably
early
like
days.
in the early days.
This
like,
is just they
were
just
still doing
released their
covers.
first record, which was
Come
called
On.
Come On. It got to about 28 in the charts, I think.
Yeah.
So I think they got themselves together. You know, they were really tight.
Yeah.
They were really good. I remember Chris White, our bass player, went up to them afterwards because he thought they were so fabulous, and he just wanted to know where they got the material from. And I think they did have a little mumble with him, but I don't think they were overtly friendly. But I
Yeah.
thought he was pretty brave because
Right.
they looked a pretty tough bunch even
Yeah.
then, you know. And Chris is very, he's very chatty, you know, and he's
Very social, yeah.
Very social. So he went.
That must
up.
have been an amazing time, though. You were playing the Kinks, the Beatles.
Do you know
the
what was
Stones.
great? Do you know what was really great about the scene in those days? Was that, I mean, you were saying that about the situation now. It was very different then, but because the record companies were so scared because they didn't understand any of this music at all.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on. So you had your head. So the thing is that you went out and they said, go and make a record. They didn't try and control what you were doing. There was no playlist. Well, there was hardly any radio that played rock and roll at all in England. But you could be cutting edge and nothing was controlled and held down. So it was a real explosion of creativity and talent. And anything avant-garde for the times was accepted. So you could just move out because they didn't know what they were listening to. There was none of this, oh, that's not commercial. They didn't know what was commercial and what wasn't.
No one knew how much money was behind it, so no one really they were like, all right, I'm just gonna play what I want, you know, and that kind of bred the original music that was coming out at the time, and then
Totally.
you know,
And even later in the 70s, I remember at the beginning of the FM explosion, it was a wonderful time for radio for me. And I remember coming over here with Argent in 1970 or 71, whenever this time was. And I remember hearing the first Crosby, Stills and Nash album for the first time. And the guy played the whole album, the DJ, because everything was DJ-led. And at the end of it, I thought, that's fantastic. And at the end of it, he said, well, I like that so much, I'm going to play it again. And he played the whole album again. And I always say, did that result in...
almost got paid well.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe. That was going
twice
on
in
too,
a row.
probably.
You must have got a couple hundred.
But I mean, the thing is, because it came from enthusiasm, it reached out to the audience, and it didn't result in any decrease in listeners at all. It had the opposite effect.
Right.
You know, the radio audience exploded.
That's a great record. That
Well, that
first Crosby, Stills and Nash record is amazing.
But it came from enthusiasm, you know, from the DJ played what he wanted to play, and I really think it's such a shame that everything's so held down now into categories. you know.
yeah, well, yeah.
Absolutely. I think we always had a problem in that respect anyway, and probably still do, that it's very difficult to categorise the kind of music we play. I mean, people often say that in interviews, what kind of music do you play? I don't know, we play
our music.
Good
really,
music.
Yeah, we just play our music. Just thinking, Graham Nash came to our concert in
Yeah.
Cleveland.
Yeah, he did.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've only met him a couple of times years ago, but it was so nice to see him, and he really loved the concert and came back
Oh, that's
afterwards.
great.
And he had a great exhibition on at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
He
didn't
did, yeah.
Of memorabilia that he owned. There's all sorts of really interesting things that he had there.
But it's great because he's still enthusiastic about what he's doing now.
I know, and he sort of said that, didn't he? He
Yeah.
said, who would have thought if we
Yeah.
were talking in the 60s that here we are 50 years later and we'd still be as committed and as
And excited
enthusiastic.
about
Yes.
the way
Did you know
ahead.
him in the 60s?
Yeah, a little.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So how have you kept your voice? That's what I always want to ask. You have one of my favorite voices, so...
Well, thank you.
I'm
Thank you very
curious
much.
as to
Well,
how
I think
It
part
sounds
of it
better
is-
than ever probably now. That's what a lot of the reviews I read say that about your voice. So.
Oh, that's great. I think a lot of it comes from a conversation that Rod and I had in the late 90s. Rod had studied with a music coach called Ian Adam.
Singing.
singing coach, yeah. And mostly he coached people from what we would call the West End, which would be Broadway for you. So these people had to sing every night, so their voices have to be strong and they have to be accurate. And he would teach a singing technique that would help them to achieve that.
Exercise, really, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and to exercise regularly. And in those days, he gave out cassettes. It shows you how long ago it was.
I remember that when we were on tour. You had the cassette before every show.
That's right.
I used to have a 78 record when I first went to it.
Anyway, that's the way I do it. When we're not touring, I probably do these exercises 2 or 3 times a week.
That's what I was going to ask, if you still...
Yeah.
Colin was really worried when I first said it. He said, no, I don't want to change. I said, you won't change your voice. It'll just give you more strength, more accuracy, and let you, if you're going to do it night after night, especially when you're getting older, it's like everything else, it is use it or lose it. You know?
Well, your voice is interesting because when you speak, you have a quiet voice. But then when you sing, it's like... It just is this big voice. It's like...
We were talking about this the other day, weren't we? And about your time in the 70s and everything.
Yeah, absolutely, when my voice was getting quieter and quieter. But, I mean, just from a point of view of singing, I'm using my whole body when I sing. So, and any sing... I mean, listen, I didn't train for very long. I had maybe half a dozen lessons. It's just a principle of... to start with, to breathe before you start singing. A lot of singers don't.
You're not trying to change anything. You're just trying to
I see
keep
singers,
it, you know.
and they don't take a breath before they start the first phrase. And I think, well, I'm not sure where you're going with this, but you're going to be struggling,
Yeah.
So, I work at that. And the Zombies are quite a loud band. So you couldn't have a whisper. You couldn't be whispering. You've got to be able to belt it out.
The rock
a bit.
band.
Do you still practice and do warm-ups even when you're not on tour? You're just home?
Yes, I do.
on days
So
off?
2 or 3 times at home a week.
Okay.
But when we're on tour, I do it before sound check. Then we have a sound check. Then I do it before the show, and then we have the show. So
you do more than an hour's practice in a day.
Yeah. So before the show, I've done a warm-up, sound check, warm-up. I've probably sung for an hour and a half before
And then
the
you
show.
do a 90-minute set. And
Yeah.
Well, that
3
happens
hours
to
of
me
singing a
on
day.
tour. When we're playing, we did a European tour that was 31 shows in 32 days in 10 countries.
That's tough.
And the first week, I was like, all right, I'm just naturally doing
jeez.
it. And then the second week, I got to warm up a little bit. And by the third week, I was warming up for half an hour.
Well,
Every week I just kept having to break my voice in because...
We try and make sure we have a day's rest after each 5 gigs, don't we?
Yeah, we do 5 gigs and then we have a day off.
Which is incredible because...
After that, we're risking it. Anything could happen with the voices, not just mine, but all of them. We need a rest after 5 days. I was saying before, excuse me, but I was saying before we started that you guys tour constantly, and I think we're by reputation we're a hard-working band, but you guys work more than us. And I was saying it's a young man's game. I think touring how you tour, so I really enjoy it while
thank
while
you for
you're
that.
young.
Yeah, well, we kind of have to because we're like an indie band. So if you're not playing, you're not making money on the road. So
Yeah.
You've got to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And we
also
enjoy
gets the
it.
band-
We enjoy
Yeah.
playing.
Listen, it's a
band
privilege to be able to
tighter.
get up
That's
each
what-
day
Yeah.
and do what I always think, do what I'd be paying to do if I wasn't earning a living.
Right.
Like this.
Yeah. We were just saying that before we started, that every year you're just lucky to be able to keep playing.
Of course.
It's amazing.
Of course. Well, we're all doing what we love to do, and we're being paid for doing it. I mean, what a fantastic privilege, especially for us. We didn't have the slightest idea that 50 years after we started, we would be fortunate enough to be out there touring the world, playing the music we love.
We're talking about songs, with that in mind, when in the 60s, everything was driven by singles. And I mean, when we started, albums were an afterthought, complete afterthought. And you imagined that a single had a life of about 3 months, and you thought no one would ever hear it again after that. So a song was so ephemeral, it was...
Yeah. It's kind of like that today, People say the album is just like a dead art form, and everybody just goes on iTunes and
because they pick out
they
the
listen
track
to 30
they
seconds.
want.
I like that one, and they pick the
that's
song they like.
veering about a bit, but I think that's such a shame because I always think one of the great things in the old days was the fact you buy an album and maybe you bought it because you'd heard a couple of cuts from it and you fell in love with them, and you might start off on that album always going to those cuts, but after a while you would play the whole album, and sometimes the deeper cuts became the ones that were by far your favourites, but it took you a while to get into them.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen so much now, and people just get the superficially attractive one.
Yeah.
You know.
Is there one artist that you two can name that got you into wanting to be a musician?
Well, as far as rock and roll, yeah, I mean, I can certainly say that. When I started, the first 10 years of my life, I always loved music, but I didn't hear any popular music I liked at all. It was pretty barren time in the early 50s, you know. And then I heard Elvis sing Hound Dog when I was 11 years old. And along with, you know, Lennon and many, many other people.
Elvis
It just,
first?
for me, the first 3 years are the only thing that I ever listened to of his. But I still get knocked out by what his voice. And when you hear these Elvis impersonators, they never impersonate the first 3 years.
Right. You're right about that.
Yeah.
I heard a story that you went to Graceland.
We did.
Oh, yeah. Well, we went in the 60s. We
We
were
asked
doing,
him to come out to play, didn't we?
We did. We were doing an interview like this, but with a DJ, and he said, "Do you want to go down to Elvis's place?"
We said, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So we wandered
we'll
up
pop down. We just
And
walked
walked
up
through
to
the door, the gate, no
Incredible.
security or anything, you know, just walked up
Was
there.
he there?
Well, we knocked on the door. This guy came to the door, who I think was his father, wasn't it, Vernon? And we didn't know, you know, and he came to the door, and we said, "Oh, hello, we're the Zombies from England. Is Elvis in?" And he said, "Well, Elvis is away filming at the moment, but he'd be real sorry to miss you guys because he loves you guys." And we thought, well, he doesn't know who the hell we are, but it's really lovely of him to be so hospitable. And he said, "Have a look around," you know. So we felt a bit embarrassed, you know, and we had a little look in the house, and then we went outside and walked around the grounds and went home. Years later, I was telling this story to an Irish DJ in the 90s, and when I got to the bit about saying he didn't know who the hell we were, he said, "Man," he said, "I've got to stop you there." He said, "I'm an Elvis freak." He said, "I can't believe you didn't know that at that time he had 3 of your songs on his jukebox." And I thought, well, there was I in 1956 thinking this super being from an alien world who I'd never seen anything like and thought I could never get close to in a lifetime. And then just 8 years later, we were #1 in the American charts, and he had our songs on his jukebox. And that just blew my mind
Amazing.
completely.
Did you ever meet him?
No.
Never met him.
No, we didn't. But we went back to Graceland's, was it last year? Something like that? Or
Oh, it's so different now.
two-
It's a
2 years
huge
ago.
industry.
But
now,
I mean, it
isn't
was interesting for us to go back. Yeah, it is totally. I mean,
It was just a house in a
when
suburban
we went,
location.
first of all, that's just where he lived, you know, and there was no
Yeah.
security, as Rod
No.
said. No, it's a huge industry. But we went back, and because we'd been there all those years before, the people at Graceland's were very interested in us coming back, and we got a wonderful VIP
Oh, nice.
tour around and,
That's awesome.
and saw it as it is now. And it was very interesting seeing it with a 50-year gap.
But John, I understand you've got a tattoo of Elvis on you.
I do.
We're rather hoping you're going to show us, actually.
I think I showed you guys on tour.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
not sure. I think
We
maybe you should show us now.
Come on, the camera's on.
We were playing with the New Daisy Theater in Memphis.
Yeah.
And we had a wild night, and I woke up with the tattoo.
That's a very traditional way of getting a tattoo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember I talked about wanting it like previously, and then our drummer at the time was like, "I think I'm gonna go get a tattoo," and I'm like, "If you get one, I'll get one."
Wow.
And
It's
I walked-
Elvis from the first 3 years, though.
Yeah,
It's a young Elvis.
I like the I like the early Elvis. You know, the Hawaiian Elvis and the Vegas Elvis. I mean, some of the songs I like, but for me, it's like the first
Yeah.
couple years. It's just like groundbreaking.
And he hated his voice early on. Later on, he was saying, "Oh, I sounded like a chicken then."
Well,
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that he didn't like the way he sung ballads in the beginning.
Okay.
Because he wasn't like a
Rich
accurate.
and-
Well, you know, when he belted it out, he felt good, but he wasn't
attitude,
like
you know?
Yeah, but when he did more of the softer stuff, he wasn't as confident. But
Okay.
I've also read that he wasn't like an outgoing person in like, which is ironic because he was such a great performer.
Yeah, yeah.
You
yeah.
know, like-
you often find that though. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, you know, I'm sure if you were talking to him, he'd be like a shy guy, but on stage, the guy. I mean, I've only
Well,
seen
apparently
videos.
Prince was exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, wow,
Prince
that's a
is
great
amazing.
performer, too.
Oh man.
Yeah.
How about you, Colin? Any singers that early on that you...
Well, I mean, it's quite similar, really. Obviously, Elvis. Little Richard, Chuck Berry,
Jesus.
and then Everly Brothers, and then later on Buddy
Such
Holly.
great guitar players, the Evans, as well.
Yeah. Best rhythm guitarist ever, they say,
I
right?
can't believe it.
I heard Little Richard's not doing too well.
Oh, really?
No, he just had like a stroke or something.
Man.
Yeah, but
Amazing.
he's groundbreaking as well.
I've always been driven by individual people, really, like Elvis, and as Colin said, Little Richard, and some of the great raw rock and rollers at the time. And then a little bit later on, I was really knocked out by Cream when they first came on.
Did you see them coming up?
I heard their very early records. The first record was terrible, Wrapping Paper, but the second one, Sunshine of Your Love, oh man, I just loved it.
Playing on that is,
Oh, and the drum groove and rhythm. It's so off kilter, It's just really lovely.
Were you around when Hendrix was coming out?
Yeah,
back
yeah.
In England?
We walked into Kingsway Studios, having just recorded "Going Out My Head." Or no, about to record "Going Out My Head," and he was just coming out having recorded "Hey Joe."
Oh,
so that was his
amazing.
very first hit,
Yeah.
And in fact, we toured with the Isleys in the UK, but that was they weren't allowed at the time to bring anyone but their bass player over with them, so they didn't have Hendrix with them because he was playing with them at the time.
Yeah.
But also around that time, I was also getting equally knocked out with people like the Miles Davis group of 1958, with Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley, and I still love that period of jazz very, very much.
Was that Kind of Blue? Was that the Kind of Blue
Kind
era?
of Blue was a
The
couple of
first
years
great
later,
quintet.
but
Oh, that was years later?
but I loved that too. Really loved,
Yeah.
and the stuff he was doing with Gil Evans at the time as well. But it didn't make me feel I should stop listening to Elvis. Or the Beatles came out. Really, they hit the UK in '62, wasn't
62 or 63, yeah.
it? It was '62 when "Love Me Do and Please Please Me" came out.
That's what I've never understood, is that some people will only listen to one kind of music. I've never understood that,
Yeah.
because I love all kinds of
Yeah.
music, and I think you said earlier on that there's good music and there's bad music,
Yeah.
but that's it. It's
That's
as
what Duke
simple-
Ellington always said.
Yeah.
There's only two sorts.
Yeah.
I've heard that someone we haven't mentioned that like you said, a lot of the early rock guys were all solo artists. But I heard that what influenced England, you guys were there, was as everyone starting bands, was the Crickets. Buddy
Oh
Holly
yeah, they
Pleasant.
were a huge influence.
So
Yeah.
people were like, wait, it doesn't have to just be one guy. If we could just form a band and all be, together in this. And were the Crickets like a big influence on that?
Oh, I think they
Absolutely.
were.
But
weren't they, Carl?
we would have thought of Buddy Holly and the Crickets.
Yeah.
We would have always thought like that, I think.
But I mean,
Well, that's
they
the Beatles,
were a
right?
big,
Didn't the
big
Beatles?
favourite. of
Yeah, but I
mine.
mean, that was a real group feeling.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
doodle doodle doodle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
and
a-
actually, I always preferred him in the
In the early
earliest
days.
with the Crickets,
Yeah,
and then when he started
me too.
recording on his own, I still liked it, but I wasn't so keen,
Yeah.
But and the other one that I always liked was Ricky Nelson.
Oh,
You
yeah.
see, I'm fond
Yeah.
of saying I can still hear a bit of Ricky Nelson in Colin's voice.
Yeah. So you're writing new stuff?
I haven't since the last album finished. I mean, we've been working so much and
Yeah.
doing so many things.
It's hard, isn't it, when you're on the road?
Like you were saying
constantly?
earlier, I can't write
On the road.
while,
Yeah.
while I'm on the road.
Yeah, ironically, we've got a new single coming out in the UK.
Yeah, Colin's song.
And
which
it's one that I've written.
Yeah,
nice.
Rod has always been the dominant writer in the Zombies.
No, it sounds
But,
great.
one of my songs is going to be the next single. So
What's the name of it?
it's called "Never Get Over You," and so I'm quietly excited about it. Actually, I didn't think it was ever going to happen, to be honest, but I'm quietly excited about that and really looking forward to it.
And we've rejigged it a bit
yeah,
for the single,
absolutely.
which goes against completely what I was saying earlier. But we wouldn't accept it unless we felt it was very true to the spirit of the song. But just cutting down my solo from 8 minutes to 30 seconds.
Well, you can do it live for 8 minutes,
exactly.
That's it.
That's more or less what we did with Hold Your Head Up, actually.
I like long solos.
Well, we had this 6.5 minute track, and we never meant it to be a single. And we went to Holland from the UK, and in spite of it being 6.5 minutes, this DJ called Alan Freeman just played it every week on his show. And against all odds, it was bubbling under the sort of top 30. So the record company phoned us up and said, if we can edit this, we're going to have a hit. And we said, no, there's no way. You leave it as it is. We're not interested, We came back and they had. And they just, basically, they chopped out the solo.
They just did it.
And of course it was a hit.
It worked out all right, right? Yeah.
Did you hear? Well, it was not recorded live, but Neil Young did a 32-minute
No.
36 minutes.
36 minute
Down by
the river live.
Yeah, he just came out in 36 minutes in one song.
One song.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
I want to beat it. I wanted to cover that song and do 40. I've always been a big fan of long guitar solos, long solos, period. Like, I mean, ever since I got into like Miles Davis and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you realize that a lot of bands that have like proficient soloists that do long solos, if you can pull it off, it's like the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's kind of there's a tipping point there where it drags on, and
Yeah,
everyone's like, "Wait, this isn't as good as it should be."
It can drag on if it's 30 seconds long.
It
as
could,
well.
yeah. You got to know when to keep the energy going.
The lovely thing is, if there is a bit of improvisation in some of your songs, you can keep it fresher.
Yeah.
Because you can inject different ideas
and it helps
every
you
night.
grow.
Even if it's just a little bit, Different parameters can be quite a creative force. It's like we were talking just before the show started about we've both done this little acoustic. Well, it wasn't acoustic. You did it with a full band, but at Drew's.
Oh yeah,
which is like a private house thing.
concert.
We've
And a
done
house
both
concert.
ways. We've done full band and
You've done
acoustic.
full band and acoustic
Yeah.
too. And the thing was, when we got there, we really wanted to do it, but we were very scared because Colin, with this virus, we both caught a virus before we came over. Mine was right in the middle. I couldn't sing a note, and I thought it's just the two of us. We normally do a lot of harmony with just the two of us. What are we going to do? So we had to do it. We had no choice. With just Colin doing the lead, and I just played the piano. But because it was forced on us, I suddenly felt it was quite liberating because there was a chance to try out different chord voicings and take it where it was to go. I freaked Colin a couple of times because he thought, I don't know where I'm supposed to start here.
Well, that's it. When he does a different intro, and I'm thinking even on things like, well, Summertime was one, but you fooled me on Time of the Season.
I know.
He did a slightly different intro, and we've been doing that for so many years, and I thought, what?
But I completely changed the chord sequence of Summertime, and
What's happening?
But it was
But anyway,
nice.
it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Would you ever do a concert where you don't do that song?
Time of the Season.
Time of the Season?
well, not
Or
over
like,
here.
not
Not
she's
over
not
here.
there, or
I don't think.
Well, I mean, I don't think it doesn't really matter to us.
Yeah.
I think people expect it.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to just do new songs if that's what people wanted.
Yeah.
But I think people would be disappointed if we didn't do certainly those two songs.
Yeah.
And the great thing about those two being the two biggest staples are the fact that there is a bit of improvisation in it, so we can change it around. And we've changed the ending a lot now, and she's not there.
Weren't you doing, was it Yankee Doodle Dandy in the middle of one of the songs?
Well, I
That's
sometimes
Hold Your
throw
Head
in
Up, I
Hold Your
think.
Head Up. I sometimes
Hold Your
throw-
Head Up, I remember
sometimes
that.
throw different things in.
Yeah.
Like I did in New Orleans. I played Dixie.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Dixie,
what it was,
that's
Dixie.
Yeah.
It was Dixie, not Yankee
Or
Doodle. It was
when we were in
Dixie.
Texas, I
I
played
love
the
that
Yellow
song, by the
Yellow
way.
Rose
Dixie's a great song.
of Texas.
But you have to be really careful
Yeah.
what you play where.
Yeah.
So
In the South.
Well, it's not just I'm not just thinking about America, but we've just been in Ireland, for instance, and of course there's
Factions,
There's
yeah.
factions between the North and the South, and so. If you're not really informed, you may well play
Come
the
across.
wrong. You may well play the wrong tune.
Well, it might be your last gig.
Yeah,
That's
so
it.
you won't play it twice.
Throw
Wasn't
some
there a
bottles.
Texas band back in the early 70s that were parading around town as the Zombies?
Do you know who did?
Billy Gibbons, I think you told me, right? Was
No,
it?
it became ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Ah.
there you go.
Yeah.
They were playing as the Zombies?
That they were.
Yeah.
We
They
we
were-
recently
nobody
found out that when Time of the Season was a #1 hit, then obviously people tried to capitalise on it, and we stopped.
Except for you.
Except for us, yeah. Except for us. So there's some fake zombies going around, and we managed to stop most of them. But we much later learned that one of the fake zombies went on to become ZZ Top.
Is that right? They're a great band. I like that.
wonderful
Amazing band.
Wonderful band, yeah. We're thinking of going out and forming a ZZ Top tribute. group.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure if I could grow the beard, but
No.
we could have a go. We could have a go.
Vivian, you work so hard. I saw you how you went so far, and you were my star. You honed your craft, you won a role, a spotlight on your shiny soul. You were my star.
Hi, I'm Elia Einhorn, and you've been listening to the Zombies and Hollis Brown on the Talkhouse Music Podcast. Thanks to Samsung 837 for hosting this talk, and to Giant Step for coordinating. For more episodes of the Talkhouse Music Podcast and the Talkhouse Film Podcast, whose most recent episode is a conversation between Michel Gondry and Terrence Nance, check us out on iTunes, SoundCloud, or at thetalkhouse.com.